Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between. And of course, in the comments below, let me know what was your pick of the week, because at the end of the episode, I talk about the viewer's pick of the week. Now, to get into this week's haul, I had about 12 books, which was a normal amount of books for me, which was a nice change of pace with Future State, because I am reading every issue 1 for Future State books. Speaking of, number 12 for me was Future State Wonder Woman, or Immortal Wonder Woman. So this is the Diana book. The other one is the Yara book. And, I was disappointed to see this so low. I was actually really looking forward to this book. I wanted to see what was up with Diana after Death Metal. Things were kind of up in the air with her. And I'm also a huge Jen Bartel fan. But this just felt a bit underwhelming. What's been hard with the Future State books is that you're thrown into stuff right from the get-go. And a lot of the stories are different in each franchise besides the Batman stuff. So we're seeing, old man Superman, but in the Superman book, he's stuck on another planet. So continuity doesn't really feel relevant here, which is kind of weird for a DC book or any superhero book. So it's harder to get into this one. I like that this one was a little bit more introspective, but at the same time, I didn't feel like I had too much to say. It was a bit more character-driven, but I didn't really feel any emotions through this one. Even Jen Bartel's artwork, I enjoyed it, but there wasn't a lot going on in the book, so I feel like there wasn't a lot of muscles that she was able to flex with this. So overall, giving Immortal Wonder Woman 2 stars, and that is number 12. Now moving on to number 11, which is, I didn't love the first issue, but I want to see it through, and that is Batman Catwoman issue 2. I guess the reason I want to see where this book is going, I was going to say I don't really know why I'm continuing the series because I didn't love issue 1. But I read all Tom King's Batman. This is the final chapter of that. I also was invested in Catwoman and Batman's daughter. I'm like, okay, it'd be kind of cool to learn more about her. But this one has the same issues as issue 1, where we can see it's very scattered. You don't really know exactly what's going on. There's also not a ton of progression in this issue. Honestly, I enjoyed issue 1 more because we got a little bit from Phantasm. We got a little bit more emotion from Joker and Catwoman. And you play off the Catwoman Joker moments here, but because it's so chopped up in the issue, it's really hard to follow what's going on. By the end, I think Catwoman kills the Joker, and you're like, okay, but this is the future Joker. What's going on with their relationship? We see none of their daughter, which again, that's the thing I was a little bit more invested in. And the reason this was higher than Immortal Wonder Woman, though, was because of that ending. It's like, okay, at least we get a bit of a cliffhanger. The artwork is also really solid for this book. I just don't know what to really say about Batman Catwoman, because I don't know how it's going to play out for the rest of the series. Again, will I get issue 3? I think I'm going to try it out digitally, but I hope it picks up. I hope this series picks up. So I'm going to give that 2 stars, and that is number 11. Moving on to number 10, which is another Future State book, and that is Superman World of War issue 1. This is the new creative team for Superman, or at least a new writer. I believe it's the new artist as well. And we get to see why people love Superman. This is a world where Smallville is celebrating not just Clark, but mostly Superman. They even have a sign of Krypton had this many people. And there's a group of people who just talk about throughout the whole issue why they love Superman. And then there's this girl who says, well, I love Clark Kent. He saved me. And at the end, the very end of the issue is when we actually get the World War version of Superman, which is very World War Hulk, which I'm like, oh, okay, so it's just a carbon copy of that story, I guess. So honestly, a bit underwhelmed with this book. I think it hit some good thematics. I enjoyed what the people had to say about Superman. I liked the POV character that they had, but it was very exposition heavy. Very, very exposition heavy. The whole entire issue was like, let me tell you this long story about Superman. And yeah, the thing that you're kind of sold on, you don't get a lot of. Then you have so much space for these secondary stories. That's one of my biggest complaints for Future State, is that I wish these secondary stories were books on their own, because they're also not backup stories. They are full comics. They're about 20 pages. So they totally could be their own book, and it makes it really hard to review these comics, because I could really love the main story and not like that secondary story. But I still got to review it as the full comic, and it's like, was it worth $7? Maybe for that one story, but you might not like that second story. So it's really hard to review. In this case, I didn't really like either story, but I felt like there could have been more space used. Like, if you had $7, why not make it more about Superman on this planet and him, people thinking he's dead? I thought would be more interesting. So, yeah, I just didn't feel like the space was utilized as well as it could have been for this one. So I'm giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 10. Moving on to number 9, which is another Future State book, and that's Future State Catwoman issue 1. Reason this is higher, there was definitely an interesting cliffhanger here where we get to see Talia and Catwoman in the same book. So Talia finds a broken up Batman, which again, how does this connect to Dark Detective? He's not kidnapped in that book. They tried to connect the Batman titles a little better than the other ones. There is another book this week that actually came out that did connect to Teen Titans though, so I was happy about that. But yeah, this one we get to see Batman is kidnapped. So it's like, okay. But he was running in the streets in Dark Detective. But I also just couldn't get into it. It's the same issue I've been having with a lot of these Future State books. I just feel thrusted in, and then there's not a lot of character beats to really follow the story, not a lot of emotion. It's just like, okay, here's a comic. Go run with it. I feel like in some ways it's like a new reader who's never read a comic before, and you're just thrown into a world and you're like, okay, what do I grab onto? I feel like I'm in the middle of a story arc. So yeah, I'm not loving the vibe of most of those Future State stories, and I feel like Catwoman had the same thing. Very action oriented for the most part, and the emotional beats I felt like they didn't really tap into as much, like the Talia stuff, and obviously this cliffhanger, we'll see where issue 2 goes. I don't know if I'll pick up issue 2, but I like the artwork. I thought that was good. I liked kind of the futuristic style of it, so I'm giving that one 2.5 stars. So moving on to number 8, which is another really hard book to review, and that was The Next Batman issue 2. So I really liked one of the stories. I'm sure you can guess which one. It was the Batgirls book. So I really, really enjoyed it. And it was weird because at first I didn't know if I would, because I read the first 2 or 3 pages and I was like, okay, Stephanie feels really out of character. You could place any other character here and it could be Stephanie. And then you read along, you're like, oh, that's the point of the book. So it's Stephanie is really, really undercover, and she just wants to help her friend, which is Cass. And there's definitely a lot of backstory with them. I want to know, because we don't really know their friendship within the New 52 / Rebirth / current continuity of DC. Like they try to say, okay, all that stuff that happened and previously with their friendship is still, happening here. But we haven't seen their friendship in a really long time, or at least panel space with it. So I'm curious to see where they're at. So I enjoyed their moments here, and I enjoyed how Steph opened up to Cassandra, and even though I was like, oh no, Stephanie's gonna be out of character, you're like, no, this is totally Steph. She'd definitely do something like this for the greater good. So I really enjoyed the Batgirl story a lot, and you also throw in Barbara Gordon, and that's who they're trying to save. So I think if you're a fan of either Batgirl, you're gonna get something out of it. Artwork was also really good for it, so I honestly, one of my favorite Future State stories for sure. It's a shame that it was like a backup story. Now going into the other ones, those are the more lackluster ones, and I think Batgirls, for sure, if Batgirls was just Batgirls, it would have been my pick of the week this week. It was a great book. But when you have to compare it to the full book, it was harder to figure out what I liked or disliked about the book. Gotham City Sirens, I really couldn't get into. I love that franchise, but it just, throws you in. I'm like, okay, now they're on a heist, now they're running, now there's this character named Dee Dee. So there wasn't as much emotional resonance for me as Batgirls, who I think did emotional resonance, by far one of the best for Future State. Then we go into Next Batman, which I do like. I've been enjoying Tim Fox, but it's hard because there's not a lot revealed about him. They're really taking their time with the character. And again, in another book, and if it wasn't this Future State event, I think it would have been a little easier to introduce him, know his relationship with his family, his relationship as Batman. And, I like seeing him as Batman. I just don't feel like I've gotten enough. But I like the artwork for this one a lot, and I want to learn more about Tim. So hopefully after Future State, we will, especially with that miniseries. So giving this one 3 stars. I know, that was so hard because, again, Batgirls was so good, but the other 2 were, for me, very lackluster. So moving into number 7, which I just decided I'm going to be reading digitally, and that is King in Black issue 3. I was very on the fence to even pick up the rest of the event, just because I'm not reading Venom, so I'm like, well, am I going to get the emotional resonance as other people will? And, that's still an issue. That is definitely still an issue. A lot of the stuff here is the Donny Cates universe of Marvel. They talk about Thor here. There's a big moment with Thor, which I've been kind of catching up with because Jane was in the recent issue, and I love Jane, and she was great in that issue. But then you have the Black Silver Surfer, or Silver Surfer Black. He shows up in the end of the issue. I have not read any of that. I have not been caught up on Silver Surfer since the Dan Slott run. So I'm like, okay, that's a cool ending for Donny Cates fans, but I haven't, and I like Donny Cates as a writer, just I haven't been reading that. So it just feels like very much in that bubble of what he's written. But this is a good action issue. You get a lot from Eddie's son. You get a lot even from the Marvel Universe. I love seeing Sue. It's a small moment, but I love just Reed not listening to her. So there's some good character beats in between. Very good action issue. You question, is Thor dead? And he's probably not, because he's fine in the other book, so that also makes events kind of confusing. It's like, oh, well, it's not really tying into Thor, even though Donny Cates is writing both books. So maybe it will tie in the next issue, I don't know, but maybe the timeline's also weird because of everything that happened with COVID. But yeah, I we'll see how that affects things. But overall, it was a pretty good issue. I think it was a good action issue. I love this creative team in general. I think they do a good job. I love Ryan Stegman's artwork. So 3.5 stars for me. Not a bad issue, just maybe not for me in particular, but still enough for me to enjoy the action. So giving that 3.5 stars, like I said, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6. I am not going to show this cover because it is pretty not safe for work, but it's Scumbag issue 4. And very not safe for work issue, but it was really fun. I enjoyed this a lot. So Ernie, he's got his sex doll who's driving the car, and he's happy. He's got cocaine. He's on top of the world. Except the sex doll is like, no, I don't want to really be with you. So that was a lot of fun. And then we get to see the butting heads of the secret agent character and Ernie, and I like to see them kind of pulling something out of each other, because Ernie is just extreme type character, and she's on the other side, kind of uptight, and when they meet together, it brings some really interesting tension, and maybe they'll learn something from each other. But then, of course, Ernie is addicted to, I guess, power in some way, or happiness, I guess, bliss, we'll say, and he might do the wrong thing to get there, and that's definitely part of the issue as well. But I enjoyed it. I had a good time with this one. I really enjoyed the concept of it, and again, just very different worlds colliding. So I'm giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 6. Now moving on to number 5, which is the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 61 / Power Rangers issue 3. I was a little confused because this I guess it's a variant cover, so they're doing the legacy number, but in the back it says Power Rangers issue 3. But this was a fun issue. This really takes the Power Rangers out of its element, something we, I guess, haven't seen, because, even Power Rangers in space, there wasn't the budget to do battles literally in space, where we get to see Zords fighting vampires, and honestly, it was just a fun issue, just to see something out of the boundaries of what Power Rangers usually could do, and also testing the relationship between Lord Drakkon and the other Power Rangers. I do feel like this issue was a little bit slower than the last. I did enjoy that one, just because I had some more time to do some character beats, but overall, this was kind of a wall-to-wall action issue, and the artwork was really good, the teamwork was very good, so overall, I had a good time with it, and there's a pretty good cliffhanger where we get to see their town destroyed, and it seems like Lord Drakkon has taken over it. So is this like a possible future? What is going on there? So that was a pretty good cliffhanger. So I'm giving that one 3.5 stars, and that is number 5. Moving on to number 4, which is Cable, issue 7, and this is a pretty good issue. It finally picks up a thread that was in the second issue, I believe. It's been kind of wishy-washy because we had X of Swords, so I'm like, okay, where's this baby kidnapping story going? And they finally pick up on it, and honestly, it's the small moments that I enjoyed with this issue more than the overall plot, because I'm kind of like, okay, we're 7 issues in, and we still haven't really dealt with this plot, but I liked Rachel and Cable teaming up together. That was a lot of fun. And even the reference to the X-Men main series where we get to see Jean and Cyclops are making a team and they're like, hey, we want to talk to you about joining the team. And then Cable's kind of making his own team with Domino. So that was a lot of fun. I had a good time with it. I liked the artwork. Again, the plot was okay, but I liked the character moments and it was a fun read. So I'm giving that one 3.5 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is Future State Nightwing issue 1. I don't want to say pleasantly surprised because I like Nightwing and I was looking forward to this and Nicola Scott was doing the artwork. But I guess because I've been, obviously reading all the Future State books, I was pleasantly surprised how it didn't just throw you into the plot, right? It's Nightwing actually dealing with Batman being gone, and you get the emotional resonance there. There's some really good action here as well. I enjoyed that. And there's also some really good plot progression, which has also kind of been a problem with the Future State books, is like, okay, you told me a story, but you didn't really give me enough to want to pick up issue 2 because there's not much of a plot, right? There's not a big overarching plot because there's only 2 issues. Like, how much can you really tell? But this one does a really good job at giving you a good cliffhanger to say, okay, I want to read the second issue. And that is Nightwing meeting up with Tim Fox, because that's an interesting character story right there. The new Batman with Nightwing. And I'm curious to see what they learn about each other. Like I said, the artwork was really good. We get to see some other Bat family members as well, like Batgirl. But also that confuses me because if Batgirl's, obviously something else has been going on with her, so things are not quite connected. But I like that, again. It's about Batman being missing, the Bat family saying, okay, even though no one wants us to do this and we're going to get in trouble doing this and we're wanted, we're going to take, Bruce's place, and they're also trying to figure out who the new Batman is. So I'm giving that 3.5 stars. I enjoyed that one, and I'm looking forward to issue 2 for that. Moving on to another book I was very pleasantly surprised with Future State, and that's Future State Shazam, issue 1. The reason I enjoyed this was because, again, it kind of told a really interesting character narrative, because we get to see Billy team up with this version of the Justice League. We got Miss Martian, we got Question. It's kind of this ragtag team. And he keeps saying, I'm not Billy, stop calling me that. And it's kind of broken up because of a mystery, though. Not really because, okay, Future State's confusing. It's because they're trying to build up this mystery of, why is Billy different? Why is he not answering his friends? And we find out it's because Billy and Shazam are 2 different people by the end of the issue, because of events that end up happening and hell and all this. So they end up becoming 2 different people. So this is really just Shazam without Billy. And I thought that was really interesting. There's some really good emotional moments here too, especially the repetitiveness of him waking up from bed. And then that second time we see him answer Mary, and Mary's like, are you crying? And he's all bloody. So I enjoyed the emotions for Shazam here. Now, I will say, reason I couldn't go higher than 3.5 stars, it was a little confusing. They made it jarring for a reason to make it mysterious, but I think it could have been a little cleaner, the narrative. But overall, the artwork was really good, and again, it told me a story where I'm like, oh, I want to get issue 2. That's really fascinating and different for the character in particular. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to my number 1 pick this week, and that is Stillwater, issue 5. This was a really good point A to point B issue where we definitely dig deeper to the thematics of this town. And we have a group of people who said, hey, maybe we could tell the judge we want to change stuff up. We want to see our loved ones. We want to let people know that we exist and that, we're kind of this mystical beings who can't die. And they're like, okay, if we tell the judge and there's enough people to say it, there will be some democracy. He won't be happy, but we'll be able to do it. That does not happen. The judge is like, no, I don't care what you think, and he shoots everybody down. The doctor might have died. Probably not, because no one dies here. But he definitely is brutally hurt in this issue. So there's a lot of good movement here, a lot of good character beats, too, to learn more about the town. There's a good moment between our main character and his mom as well. So overall, I thought it was a very solid issue, and just shows how brutal this town is in general. So I'm giving Stillwater issue 5 4 stars, very solid read, and that is my pick of the week. Now, let me know in the comments below what was your pick of the week, because we have the viewer's pick of the week, which last week's pick was The Amazing Spider-Man. So that was your pick of the week. Here are some comments about that. And hopefully you guys enjoyed. Of course, follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Go check out my comics like Father Like Daughter and They Call Her a Dancer. And every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time is Comic Book Weekly. So that is our comic book podcast, which we have a Kickstarter coming up Tuesday, so less than a week, where viewers can participate in our podcast even more, and we're trying to fund an audio version of the podcast to make it even more professional. So hopefully you guys could go support that as well. The page is in the description below, so you guys could go follow the page. That way you could back it up right away. We have some early bird specials there, so you definitely want to follow. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this comic. Bye guys!